It's episode 31 of the Toadstool Boardroom for the week of February 15th, 2023. My name's Logan Plant, and I'm joined today by Chris Schreiber.
Hello.
And a mystery guest joins the boardroom. Introduce yourself, mystery guest.
Hey there, my name's TJ. You might know me better as Hero TJ or Dark TJ from Nintendo Wire.
I know you as Hero TJ, primarily. Yeah,
that's certainly the more noble persona, the one that I prefer to be associated with.
Yeah, so Hero TJ is here in the boardroom with us today, and this is kind of a cool full circle thing for us. I've known TJ for nearly 7 years, back when I started at Nintendo Inquirer. Now it's known as Nintendo Wire, and we've been to E3 together in 2018 and 2017. I was at E3, hung out with TJ, talked about Amiibo a lot, Breath of the Wild a lot, and we're here to talk about Amiibo a lot today because TJ, you know, at Custom Conquest, he customizes Amiibos. Before the show, he was saying that he doesn't make Amiibo, he breaks them and reconstructs them. So we're going to be talking a lot about his Custom Conquest efforts and just kind of Amiibo in general, because they've been out for nearly 9 years, which is tough to believe. They turned 9 in November since the Amiibo initiative started at Nintendo. And kind of last week, we were thinking that maybe this is the year that Amiibo start to wind down. So we thought that it would be a good time to kind of look back on the start of the Amiibo craze, kind of the rise and fall of the hype surrounding them, our favorite Amiibo, their functionality in games, all of it. We're going to talk about all that stuff today on the show. But first, we got an email, toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com, and you can always email the show there with your questions, comments, whatever you like, and we'll read it on the show. And this comes from Elliot, and this is in responses to last week's show, where we asked you your favorite part of the Nintendo Direct. And Elliot says, my favorite part of the Direct was the Game Boy and GBA games coming to Switch, specifically the first Golden Sun game being named as a future GBA game. I hope Nintendo recognizes the desire for a game like that in the future and uses the HD 2D engine to make it. With the Switch being such an RPG system, it's crazy this game hasn't made it in any way before this. Glad to have you and Chris back. Thanks, Elliot, for sending that in. And TJ, I wanted to ask you, what was your favorite part of the Direct last week?
Before I get into that, I just want to say what an honor it is to join two such illustrious Nintendo fans as yourselves on this podcast. I'm a big fan of the show. I never miss an episode.
Thanks, TJ.
Thanks, man.
My pleasure. My pleasure. The Direct was, in my opinion, the first one that really got me excited since the end of the Smash Brothers character announcements. It's been kind of a dry spell, at least for, I know if you're a farming fan, there were a few good ones in there, but that just happens to not be my game style. In Taiwan, where I live, the Direct aired at 6 a.m. So that's a little bit earlier than my wife gets up, but I did need to watch it in our room. So I tried to put the volume really low when I was on my headphones. And at one point, she said, is the Direct really good? And I said, yeah, it's really good. She goes, I thought so because you audibly gasped. I said, I did? I did? When? And she said, I looked over at the screen and I saw Birdo. And I was like, oh, I did. I audibly gasped when the realization set in that we were not just receiving courses, but it was also possible for this Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Pass to include characters. And that was just such a shocking revelation to me. I'm not a big Birdo fan. I do think she was a missing piece in the Mario Kart puzzle, though, I'll say. But I am just completely beside myself that Diddy Kong is not in the game. He's literally the only Mario Kart character who has his own titular racing game, and he's still not included in Mario Kart. He was my Double Dash main, so he is a little bit of a missing hole. I only race as me, TJ, because I just can't bring myself to play as anybody other than myself since I'm a choice in the game. Yeah, maybe I'm semi-narcissistic in that way, but the only character that's more compelling to play as than my favorite Nintendo characters is myself, alongside my favorite Nintendo characters. But I think it wasn't so much that I love Birdo being in there, but what that represented as, wow, they really undersold this pass. It is profoundly more valuable than it originally they originally made it out to sound. And then also coupled with there being a new track, which I didn't know was a possibility. I thought they were only revamping and refurbishing old tracks. And of course, Breath of the Wild sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, is a big thing, but that's a given. I think that's the game that most people are most excited for. So that obviously moved the needle quite a bit for me. And maybe this game didn't really get a lot of attention when it first released, but one of my greatest experiences on the 3DS was Fantasy Life.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was like this little sleeper game, and it came at a really good time for me, where I had a lot of opportunity in a portable device to be able to put time into it, and there were no other compelling games at the time to compete for my attention. So the fact that there is a sequel coming to the Switch, I'm a little bit excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah, those are great picks.
Yeah, and my understanding is that's like the first one since they had like a MOBA or something, or like a mobile game that fans were kind of like, eh. And then
I never even knew about that one. I did hear about it recently, where people were like, yeah, there was a mobile one, but it was pretty lame. I missed it completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good picks. Yeah, Zelda is obviously, I think, the most exciting thing from that presentation. And I had a thought this week, and I want your guys' opinion on it. And kind of basically, when Breath of the Wild came out, I think one of the coolest things about it was kind of the conversation that surrounded it, right? Like, you would do something really cool, and then you tell your friends about it, and they'd be like, wow, I haven't even seen that. And then they'd have completely different stories from your own. And I remember back when I was playing the original Breath of the Wild, I was kind of like, I was trying to decide between the two sides of, do you play this game for yourself to not get anything spoiled for you, see all the surprises on your own, and then go talk about it? Or do you have kind of that schoolyard experience where you do text your friends or you call your friends, whatever, and say, hey, guess what I just saw? And then you listen to what they have to say too, knowing that you will be spoiled on some things you've never seen before, but also kind of having that social experience that not even other open world games, but really any other game just has compared to what Breath of the Wild had. So, Chris, what do you think? Tears of the Kingdom, are you going to like kind of hunker down, be a hermit, play this on your own? Or are you going to share your stories with people knowing that maybe when you see something cool, you will have already heard about it before?
So I'm very privileged in that I know the people that I'm going to have conversations with about Tears of the Kingdom. I know I have a good grasp of the gauge of like, are they going to ruin something for me? And there are definitely people out there that I could be like, yeah, no, like big time spoilies. Like, I don't want this ruined for me. And they will totally go against everything that I've asked them to do, and then I'll get very upset. Going into this, I know I won't talk to those people about it. And then there are those other things where it's like, okay, light spoilers, this area. Have you been to an area that is blue or whatever? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that I can kind of, oh no, like what is that? And you always want to try to get like just enough so you know where to look. If maybe you haven't been somewhere yet, or you try to get a gauge of like how many hours has that person sunk in more than I have, if they've seen something that I haven't, or like what diverging path did they go on that I didn't go down. But it does get to a point where, especially like I did this with Breath of the Wild, where I had told myself, I wasn't going to beat the game until I had done every shrine. And it took me a really long time to do it. But I did eventually get to a point where I was like, you know what? I don't want anything that you've seen, because you probably didn't do everything. Like, I don't want to know about it at this point. Like, eventually you get beyond that, like, oh, it's new and exciting for everybody. And then it is spoiler territory. We've all kind of sunk like 40 hours into it. Mm-hmm. And that's when it's like, all right, yeah, I'm still playing this. Leave me alone.
Okay. So kind of a hybrid then.
Yeah.
All right, where are you at, TJ, on this topic?
I have a similar sentiment to Chris, where most of the people who I communicate with have a good gauge on what is something that'll enhance my excitement and what's something that might spoil it for me. Like, usually most of the people I communicate with respect to games, like Amiibo Jason who's my Nintendo Wire colleague, a mutual friend of ours, Logan, he might send me something like, I just wrote a Lionel. Now, I wouldn't consider that a spoiler, but I get that message. I immediately need to power up the game and figure out how he did this and try to achieve it myself. Mm-hmm. I could fight 100 Lionels and I never knew I could get on top of it. Maybe it didn't even occur to me. I think Breath of the Wild struck such an amazing balance between unique player experience and water cooler talk, because there are so many different diverging paths that you could take that almost every single person who played the game had an experience unique to themselves, where even if somebody did spoil something, it doesn't change the way that you encounter it. Maybe they did something in the first minute that profoundly affected the way that the rest of the game went. Even just the tutorial plateau, you get a different order of your what are they called, the Sheikah Slate abilities, then that changes the way that you can approach acquiring the other ones. So I don't really think I'm too afraid of spoilers, which is weird to say about a Zelda game, because going back to Ocarina of Time, I put cotton in my ears. I did not want to hear, and I was one of the first of my friends to play it, so I didn't have a real threat of it, but I would have hated if somebody revealed some of the big twists in that game, that most of them are now pretty common knowledge. But it would have really...
Sorry, spoilers.
What? yeah, like that. If I had heard that, I would have been so mad. Like, I might have been moved to violence, to be honest.
Yeah. But at least back then, it was harder to get spoiled on things like that. Like, now, you know, Tears of the Kingdom drops, and it's like, all right, let me go on Twitter and block Zelda, Tears, Kingdom.
Like, isn't that what a magical thing about Breath of the Wild, though? Where you could, in the internet age, where you could literally screen cap 30 seconds of your game and put it online and it not be a spoiler. You're just like, wow, I had no idea you could do that. And that's a testament to the way that the game was developed. And I think rooting it in the physics engine and not making it story-centric, I'm personally bothered by the criticism that Breath of the Wild was light on story, because I think that anybody who feels that way may just lack the imagination that the game is meant to invoke. To me, the story of Breath of the Wild is the most profound video game story that I've ever experienced, but a lot of that is because of what I brought to the game and the story that was told based on the pieces that Nintendo dropped nuggets, and then I had to use my imagination to create the connective tissue to bring all that together, and that was a very fulfilling and rewarding experience. But if you're wanting to be spoon-fed a story, that's not, Breath of the Wild is not the game for you. And maybe my retelling of that story is going to be profoundly different than somebody else's. So in that way, I think I'm not too worried about being spoiled in Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, it's really like it's a journey of self-discovery rather than of the actual narrative that's within it, and that is something that is super cool about it. So here I am, dear Boardroom listeners, to present you my fail-proof way to avoid spoilers in Tears of the Kingdom, and also get that water cooler talk. So here's what I'm going to do. I have a journal, and I'm going to write daily diary entries about my adventures in Tears of the Kingdom. I implore you to do the same. I think that you guys should do this too. And then we can all meet up and read our little diaries together after we all feel comfortable and ready to have everything that's in the game spoiled for us. Boom, there you go.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Link keeps a little journal too, so it'll just add another depth to the adventure. I
will try to do this. I tried to do this with The Last of Us Part 2. And in day one, I sobbed so much that I was like, I can't even get the words on the page. And then I just never did it again.
Well, this is the right kind of game to do it for. It is. It is.
That's more of a linear type thing. But
so we can join us, Boardroom listeners. Get yourself a journal and record a diary with your journey through Tears of the Kingdom, and then we can all talk about it. And
my wife is already fully prepared for me to retire from life for the subsequent 2 months after the release of that game. So
as long as I beat it before July 20th, I'll be good. That's when
July 20th.
That's when my baby son is due.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You've got a timer.
Yeah.
I think you'll make it. Yeah, 2 full months.
Yeah.
Just quit your job take your leave early. Take your paternity leave when Zelda comes out.
That's not a bad idea.
Got a good time now. All right, so that is some Tears of the Kingdom talk. Let's move on to our main topic of the show, which is Amiibo. We're going to talk a lot about Amiibo. We're going to spoil everything. So if you don't want spoilers I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about Amiibo from the day they were announced at E3 2014 all the way to where they've come now. And I kind of want to start at the very beginning, because I think that when these were announced at E3 2014, I did not think that a decade later I would have over 100 of these things on a shelf. I thought that I would buy a couple here and there. I'd buy my favorite characters. And like many of us, it did not end up like that. So these were announced at E3. They were part of that cute video with Iwata and Reggie showing off the Mii fighters and stuff in Smash Brothers. And they come back and they tap an Amiibo, and that's the first sight we get of the Mario Amiibo. And they came out in November alongside Smash on Wii U, $12.99 at launch. There were 12 characters in that first wave. So, Chris, we'll start with you. Before launch, how into Amiibo did you think you were going to get?
I knew I wanted I wanted the first line. I mean, I bought every single one when they first came out. I didn't realize, and then I was like, maybe I'll just get the Smash line, is what I told myself. And then they put how many characters in Smash. And then after that, they did. I held restraint with the Super Mario series, but the Zelda series got me good. This whole, my wife just got home from work. This whole episode is about Amiibo. She's just like, she popped her head. Are you talking about Amiibo?
What does she think of Amiibo? What does she think of you?
Come here, babe. What do you think of Amiibo? What do I
honestly think about Amiibos? Yeah. I think they're stupid.
Oh no. Uh-oh.
Like,
I'll sign the divorce papers tomorrow.
Saying that they have some functions in the games, I just don't think it's worth it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. It's really not about the functions in the game. I think we all learned pretty quickly it was all just about collecting these figures.
Well, no, it's that, and you know what it is for me was growing up. Like kids today don't understand. Growing up, we didn't have, the only way to get Nintendo toys was you had to order them through Nintendo Power. You couldn't just walk into Toys R Us and they were available. Like these were really some of the first figures that were like of a pretty high quality of a lot of these characters that we had. Nobody made a Marth figure. You know what I mean? I don't even like Fire Emblem. I just thought it was cool.
Okay. So, but going into it, you thought you were going to get the Smash line.
Yeah, and then like I didn't anticipate how many different lines there were going to be, and I didn't anticipate that they were going to basically make it this like rush of trying to find these things. Like, you know, you're on Reddit looking for that rooster guy that worked at Amazon who would be like, I heard that you know that we're gonna get this drop on this day and blah blah blah. Oh, and Target's got Jigglypuff as an exclusive, and you know, like I was following that subreddit every single day for tips about when different characters were gonna drop. It was very exciting trying to chase them.
All right, TJ, how about you? Before release in November, what did you think you were gonna do with these?
For me, the single most impactful E3 moment of all time was that battle between Reggie Fils-Aimé and President Iwata, and the combination of revealing the amiibo and revealing Mii fighters in Smash was overwhelming to me. And those two things just captivated me immediately. I knew that I was going to explore these amiibo deeper than maybe just like you said, Chris, you can't go around just buying Nintendo toys. And I grew up as a kid longing for these figures. So I knew that there was a place on my shelf. And I have a history of Smash Brothers going all the way back to the beginning. The trophy collecting in the game was a fun challenge to me. So being able to make the trophy collecting real just deepened that experience. I never imagined I was going to get all of them. But I think initially, I know that I pre-ordered 4 of them. I pre-ordered Mario, Pikachu, Donkey Kong, and Link. And I thought, I'm going to get the original 12, just the original ones from the first Smash Brothers game. And it was somewhere around, I want to say, wave 3, where I was trying to pre-order, I think it was King DDD or Ike, if memory serves, and they were nowhere. And I was like, okay, this is a lot more difficult than I thought. So I'm just going to precursorily pre-order all of them, and if I don't want it, I can return it. But of course, that never wound up being the case. And I
feel like that happened with a lot of people.
It just grew. It snowballed. And, and of course, unlike you, Chris, I did not have the restraint when the Mario series was announced. I was like, oh, I'm in for that for sure. And Zelda was a foregone conclusion. There was absolutely no way I wasn't going to buy the living daylights out of those things.
Yeah, for me, I thought Skylanders were dumb. I didn't get the appeal of collecting all these characters, and I think that's because there was no attachment to them, so they were just toys. Like there wasn't anything behind them, a history to them. So I think that really the most genius decision Nintendo could have made was the one that they did make, which was starting this all with the Smash Brothers line. I think that, I mean, the first game that I bought with my own money was Melee. And I remember booting it up, and literally the opening movie is the toy Mario turning, like the figure Mario on the Smash coin base, turning into actual Mario and jumping into the battle. And that is Amiibo. And so when I actually watched this video, I don't remember watching it at the time. I watched it today of Bill Trinan like showing off what Amiibo did at that E3, and it actually showed that clip of Mario from Melee. So they knew exactly what they were doing with this. And I, in that moment, was like, uh-oh, I got a bad feeling about this. And then launch day comes, and I hold myself back. I just get Mario, right? Mario's the only one that I get. But unfortunately, Mario's like the coolest one of that first set. Like, he is such a good figure. The fireball is awesome. There's no stupid plastic base like so many of the Amiibo have. His face isn't weird like Link's or Marth's is, or some of the other more human anime-looking characters. Like, it is like a high-quality figure for $13. And I go to the store, and I'm like, I'll grab Link. Like, he's not great, but I love Zelda. I'll grab Link. And then before I knew it, it was like Donkey Kong and Samus and Pikachu were in the cart. I went Christmas shopping, and I was like, oh, I'll grab Kirby while I'm here. And it just all fell apart there. And there were a number of different factors for that happening. One was I had a friend in high school who was also into these things, and we were on the Amiibo subreddit, and it was like Wii Fit Trainer, Villager Marth, the Holy Trinity. You can't find them anywhere. And then he found them at a store, and he bought them. And he's like, come on, man, we got to catch them all. And I just remember that moment that he told me, you got to catch them all. I'm like, that's it. This is over. And then there was Nintendo Voice Chat, the podcast. Those guys were going nuts over Amiibo at IGN during the time. And I was a huge fan of that show. That was right when my fandom of that podcast was starting. And just listening to them talk about it, it was just like, it did feel like this kind of fun social thing to do at the time, at a time where there were no Nintendo games, right? This was in the heart of the Wii U era when there just wasn't new stuff to play. And honestly, for a while, it felt like Amiibo hunting filled that hole a little bit, of that Nintendo-shaped hole in your heart of there's no games to play right now. Guess I'll just dump all my money on these figures that they're selling.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah,
so that's where it started. And the moment that I really remember, kind of the turning point for me, where I had this... I'm such a nerd. I had a spreadsheet of these things. And it was, I had like pictures of the ones I'm going to get, the ones that if I see, I will buy, and the ones I didn't care about pursuing. So I like sort them into these three categories. And then I remember the moment that it all flipped was I went to the store. I was with my parents. I saw Little Mac, and I was like, I don't need Little Mac. I went home. That night, I was like, I really should have bought that Little Mac. I get in my car, I drive back, and Little Mac is gone. And that was the turning point where it's like, the second I see one I don't have, I'm buying it. It was this scarcity, this thrill of the hunt that was super fun and really unlike anything else I've ever really done in the gaming space. But yeah, Little Mac is the one I think of that was like, that's where it turned on a dime to me getting all of the Smash Brothers ones.
Logan, buddy, I had that spread thing going exactly like you did. I made that exact column. I had them all. These are the ones I have. I had the little picture icons, the PNGs. I kept updating that spreadsheet on the daily. It was the exact same thing. I had their release dates marked down, who was exclusive to what retailer, all that stuff. And yes, I felt very nerdy. I was like, why am I pouring this much effort into collecting these figures? My wife would come home and I'd be like, okay, here's the Amiibo update for the day. And God bless her, she would listen to me and nod her head and feign interest. But at some point, it just became, so what happened in the world of Amiibo for today? Like, you're such a good wife.
So I mean, a lot of it, real quick, no, a lot of it was just the how smart can I be in figuring out how to get these things? Like, what is going to be the best source of truth for me to have the best chance? Like, there were some that literally dropped at 3 a.m. and I would set alarms like, okay, it's 2:58.
Oh,
you know?
You're bringing me back, brother. It created a lot of community competition, but also a lot of community camaraderie. Like,
yes.
People were, we knew that we were all like 40 people were waiting in line at a Target to get a Rosalina, and that only 14 of us were going to get one. But yet at the same time, I'd be getting calls from friends saying, hey, this Amiibo is dropping at 3 a.m. on Amazon. You have to be there and pre-order it immediately. So it created a lot of really close bonds and relationships that I maintain to this day. I don't know if it weren't for Amiibo that you and I would have ever even met, Logan.
No, I actually wanted to talk about that. This is a good segue into that. I was thinking about this the other day. I don't remember if I said this on a prior episode of the Boardroom, but I am in this industry indirectly because of Amiibo. Like, seriously. So I start collecting these things. I make my Twitter account, my first one, that no longer exists, I don't think, to just kind of like follow Amiibo alerts accounts. One of those is Amiibo News, which is headed by our friend Jason, who started Amiibo News and later kind of launched that into a little mini side career for himself with Nintendo Inquirer, a Nintendo news site, which is now Nintendo Wire. And then I follow this site to get in-stock alerts of Amiibo and stuff like that. And then I see a tweet from them one day that basically is like, hey, we're looking for writers. And I'm like, oh, I've never written anything before in my life, but I shoot over this application with these 2 writing samples that I made. One of my writing samples actually was a feature called The Thrill of the Hunt, and it was about the early days of Amiibo. Like, I wrote that and sent it in for this application. It's still live on the site today. And then I write for Nintendo Wire for 5 years, go to a couple E3s, meet TJ, meet a bunch of awesome other really cool people, and eventually start writing for IGN and doing all these podcasts and stuff. It's like you really can trace it all back to Amiibo, which is just super crazy. But yeah, that's how important this was to me at the time, and it's just kind of a cool string of events that led to all these different things happening.
I absolutely read that article, and I knew you were a very talented young man even then, and it's been a privilege to watch your career blossom.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm happy to have you on the show. It's been a long time coming, so yeah. Man, Amiibo, there's a lot of emotion tied into Amiibo, I think, because of what you guys are talking about. It sounds stupid, but it's true. You do make a lot of bonds and connections, so I actually want to kind of go there next and talk about maybe some of the most memorable Amiibo hunting moments that you had. And if you guys need a second to think of any, I'll share one first. I had a rule for myself. I thought it was more fun to get them in person. I ordered none online. I never reserved them online in stock. I never did that. I went in store and bought them all in person. I thought that was...
You're a brave man.
And it worked out. I ended up getting them all except for one I never found in store. The Wii Fit trainer I ended up importing from Japan. That was the only one that I never found. But I remember on May 29th, 2015, so the day Splatoon came out, it was the day Wave 4 came out, and Wave 4 was just nuts. It was the peak of it. It was when NES literally crashed GameStop systems for like an entire day when people were going in store to pre-order him. And I was in line, and I was first in line at GameStop. And GameStop used to do this thing where they would put this paper on the board with the little images of all 6 figures, and then a handwritten number of how many of them they had. So you didn't have to waste time waiting in line. If you're like, I'm 5th in line, they only have 4 of these. They don't have what I'm looking for. And I was first in line, so I had my pick of the litter of whatever I wanted. And this dude who was second in line saw that there was one Robin, and he's like, man, Robin is my main. He's the only one I want. God, and I have to leave. And I was like, no, man, you can have the Robin. And then we just stayed there and we chatted about games for like 2.5 hours waiting for this GameStop to open. And we go in, and I got like Lucina, who was really hard to find, and Charizard and Wario, and he got his Robin, and he's like, man, thanks so much. And we swapped Wii U friend codes. We played Splatoon together for a few months, and we're still friends on Switch, and I'll see his name pop, and I'll be like, that's the guy who mains Robin in Smash Brothers. But that was just a super fun one of waiting in line with these people, because when I was in high school, I didn't have a lot of video game friends. I had mostly sports friends. I had friends that were into baseball, because I'm super into baseball. And so I never really had that many people that I talked about games with. So just to kind of have these social connections with people out on the Amiibo hunt was just really memorable. And that's the one I remember the most.
My moment is pretty similar to yours. I remember that GameStop completely crashing. I knew it was going to be an issue, and I went in to pre-order them. So this is not even on release day. This is well in advance. I was doing the math on times that different stores open, and that particular release had 3 exclusives. Target had Jigglypuff, GameStop had NES, and Toys R Us had Greninja. And I'm thinking, do I have the ability to be at all of these places when they open? And I was starting to come to the realization that I would not be able to, because even though they had staggered opening times, I knew that there was going to be a line out the door. So I went to GameStop to pre-order with my infant son in front of me in like a baby Bjorn carrier and my 2-year-old daughter holding my hand. And I went there 90 minutes before you were allowed to pre-order. And I was the only one there. But 10 minutes later, some people started to show up. And then 10 minutes later, more people. And as it creeped closer and closer to that time, there was a line out the door at this GameStop. And I knew that I would be able to get them because I was first, but nobody knew what was happening when all of these GameStops were crashing. So even after I was allowed to pre-order them, it was another 45 minutes or an hour until my pre-orders were actually secured. And I'm the only parent there crazy enough to have 2 children. And you never know what you're going to get. So I was so thankful that my son was just so content looking around at all the video games. Maybe that was one of his first impressions of video games. And I kind of indoctrinated him into the gaming life very young, because now he's as obsessive as anyone. Awesome. And my daughter, I was very proud of the fact, I don't know if this is something somebody should be proud of, but I used to do this little parlor trick where on the Super Smash Brothers soundtrack, there's a CD cover and you have all of the characters in a silhouette. My daughter could look at the silhouette of any Smash Brothers characters as a 2-year-old and name them. She couldn't say her ABCs and she couldn't count to 20, but she knew every single Smash Brothers character just by their silhouette. So she was one of my first amiibo adventuring buddies. And because both of my kids, I have a third now, but he wasn't born yet, but both of my kids were with me and shared that experience with me, it is something that I look at any of those figures and I remember standing in that line, especially Ness.
How about you, Chris?
I mean, not nearly as good as anything TJ just said, but I definitely remember there was like a regular group of people that I would run into at like the Target near my house. And I remember when Splatoon came out, like there was like that came out and The Witcher 3 had come out like a week and a half prior. And like, you know, the one guy walks in or walks up like to the line and it's like, is anybody else playing The Witcher 3? And we were like, no, man, we're here to pick up Splatoon. Like, we're Nintendo people. I'm not playing The Witcher. And he was just like, oh, man. And then he like talked about it for like an hour. And we were like, all right, cool. But I'm never going to play it. I remember that. Like, they were always nice guys. One of those guys, I remember he was with me Valentine's Day. I don't know what it was,
2015. It was, yeah. Probably.
It might have been 2015, probably. It was whenever I got my first. It was the day I got moved into my first apartment.
It's the day Majora's Mask 3D came out.
Yeah, he and I were there at 4 a.m. It was 0 degrees outside, and we were like we had both called the day before. It was like they got 3, two of them are going to be us. I remember. He and I chatted for a while, just to like distract ourselves from the cold. And then. The other one, I remember asking my boss if I could leave work to pre-order the Ness amiibo at GameStop, and he let me.
Wow. That's awesome. A good boss.
Yeah. God bless Chip. But he, I was like, oh my God, the servers are crashing. Like, I'm in IT. Like, I work in IT. And he was like, can you do it at the store? I think it was his idea, actually, now that I'm like recounting the memory. Mm-hmm. He's like, can you do it at the store? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And he was like, I mean, it's like 5 minutes from here. And I was like, see ya. And I just, ran over there and did it.
If I can I share one more really quick one?
Yeah.
When Lucario was released, he was a Toys R Us exclusive, and he was really short shipped. There were not a lot of those around. Mm-hmm. And so I was standing in line, and somebody from Toys R Us comes out and starts handing out tickets. And he said, we only have as many as we have tickets. And there were 14 of them. The 15th person in line was a little boy with his 2 parents. He was in a wheelchair. His head was completely bald. He had oxygen in his nostrils. So you knew this kid was dealing with some terrible illness.
Yeah.
And so my heart immediately sinks. So I start to step out of line. I know what has to be done. So I step out of line, and the person next to me puts their hand out and pushes me back into the line and goes and gives his ticket to that kid. And it just melted my heart. I was like, wow, this is a highly competitive hot collector's item. And this guy knew what this moment called for, and he rose to the challenge. And I really appreciated that. It really touched my heart.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Try not to cry.
Yeah,
no,
I'm so good. Just trying to swallow it back a little bit.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to my parents because I always date myself on this show. I was in high school when Amiibo came out. So I was still living at home with my parents, and there'd be times where my mom would be like, I'm going to the grocery store, and I'd be like, I'll come, and I just hop in the car to go check out the Amiibo. And my mom called me out sick of school on that day that Wave 4 came out. And then we drove all over together and just hunted down the Amiibo that day. So yeah, and that was just a super memorable day. And I remember, so Fred Meyer is a Northwestern grocery chain. It's a Kroger. It's what the Kroger brand is in the Pacific Northwest. And they had a really robust electronics section, but nobody knew about it. And they opened.
Do they still do that?
No,
I remember that was like a thing. Like yep. I would always try to find them around me, and I'm like, "That's right, they're not in the Philly area."
And they opened at 7 a.m., which was way before any of these other places that had Amiibo, besides like Walmart.
Yeah.
And so that was always the first stop. And you'd always get the grumpy electronics employee. They'd never have them out because like they didn't know it was a big deal, like GameStop or Toys R Us would. So that they'd wheel out, and then it would just be like Christmas because they'd have these cardboard boxes that were just sitting in the back, and they'd slit them open. I'd be like, "What's inside?" And they're like, "Oh, it's Pac-Man." And then that's how I got my Pac-Man. And yeah, so that was always an awesome place to go. And then at one Fred Meyer, this was after I had decided to get them all, but I had missed most of Wave 1 because I hadn't really decided until like December, like I said, when Little Mac was around. And so we were going around looking for Wave 3, I think, at this point. It was the day like Mega Man came out. And I was looking for Mega Man, and I find him at this Fred Meyer that we had driven like 30 minutes to go to. And then scrunched up underneath the Skylanders display, the box was just utterly destroyed, but I don't care because I unboxed my collection. And I see it, and I just see it. I'm like, that's an Amiibo box. And I just yank it out from under this dirty shelf. And it's Star Fox, who had at that point kind of disappeared from shelves. He was super common in the beginning, but then he was gone. And so yeah, I walk up to the register and I have this pristine Mega Man and this just wrecked Star Fox inside this box. And that was a super memorable find too.
That's amazing. Cheers to Mrs. Plant for having her priorities in order.
Yeah.
I already told my kids that I'm taking them out of school the day that the Mario movie releases.
Awesome.
And
nice.
Why would you do that? I said, children, you need to understand there are things in life more important than school.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. So it seems like your mom understands that as well.
Yeah.
Since we're shouting at our moms, I'll just give one more quick one. Bowser Jr. was also a Toys R Us exclusive, and I know we're going to talk customs a little bit later, but I wanted to get a hold of 8 of these, and most stores did have limits on how many you could get. At the time, I lived in the Los Angeles area, and there are Toys R Us's everywhere, but I didn't realistically think I could store hop and pick up these Bowser Jr. So I thought realistically the most I was going to be able to get was maybe 2, and so I called my mom and said, I don't know if you have any time on this day, but if you can swing by a Toys R Us and try to pick one of these up for me, that would be stupendous. And so she goes, how many do you want, like in a perfect world? And I said, well, I'd like to get 8. And so she spent the first half of the day driving to every Toys R Us, and she lives in Illinois, so they're not near as close together as they are in California. And she wound up getting, I think, 12 Bowser Jr. Or no, I wound up with 12. So I think she got 8 all by herself. And
That's
she called her friends and said, hey, will you come with me to Toys R Us? Because I'm trying to buy these things for my, and so I'm going to date myself a little bit. My full-grown adult son in his 30s. He wants these toys. Can you follow me? And she made my dad go into, my dad came with her. He's, I mean, I appreciate the man for doing this, but it's not his thing. So he just went because my mom made him. She made him go to the car, change his clothes so he could go back into the store and buy another one. And
that's cunning.
Yeah, my mom was pretty serious about it.
That's how
she had a warrior mentality. She's like, I 8, I'm getting 8.
Yeah, made it happen. That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of always hoped, and also didn't, because it'd be like over $100, that they would make a Koopaling amiibo for all 7 Koopalings.
Yeah, that's still kind of crushes me a little bit. I took matters into my own hands, as you well know, but I would have much preferred to be able to have one of each. And that extends to just about any of the characters that have these alternate skins, like Alf and Male Wii Fit Trainer and female Robin. And of course the Hero. Hero would be amazing to have all 3 of those. I'm sad that they didn't go for that. That was... I think maybe if we lived in a different time, that could have happened.
If they were still hot. If they were still as hot as they were back then.
And if production didn't become so daunting. I think Nintendo had every intention of releasing the amiibo day and date with the Smash Brothers DLC fit characters. But I think production delays resulted in that not just not being a possibility. I genuinely believe that all things considered, had we not had some kind of dramatic impact on our supply chain and manufacturing, they probably would have aimed to hit those dates, and they could have managed to produce more. I think it kind of had to get pared down a little bit towards the end here.
Yeah, I said that I didn't get any online. That's changed in the Ultimate era, where they pretty much disappear forever once they're gone. There's exceptions.
Yeah, you almost
like
have to get them online.
Super common because Minecraft. But yeah, like I just have this trick. Best Buy puts them up for in-store pickup like at midnight the day they come out. So I just log on, secure them, go pick them up that day. And it's just not as fun as it used to be. Like that Wave 3, Wave 4 peak, like when Palutena crashed Amazon also. That also happened. It's like, it's just crazy. Like who cares about Palutena prior to Smash Brothers? Nobody, but yeah, just the hype was
female Corrin, that one opened a lot of hope for me that maybe some of these alternates would have a future. Female Corrin is amazing, and I'm so thankful I didn't have to customize that one, because that would have been really challenging. But that one became super hard to find, and to this day, maybe she just got a re-release. I'm not sure about that.
For a Fire Emblem Engage,
But prior to that, she's one of the hottest aftermarket items out there. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Also, shout out to my dad, who also drove me up and down the I-5 corridor on that same weekend you were talking about, Chris, to find Shulk, because Shulk was GameStop exclusive, super hard to find. I called all the GameStops in the area, and we found this one like 30 miles away, and they're like, we've got one for in-store pre-order, but you can only reserve it in-store. And we got in the car, and we went. Because at this point, I could drive, but I didn't like driving on the freeway yet, because I had like just gotten my license. So I was like, can you take me? And shout out to my parents for driving all over so I could spend my money on these amiibo.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, how many amiibo do you all have? Because there's a lot of lines. I wrote down a list that I'll just fire through here. We got Smash Brothers, Super Mario, which includes the Mario 30th Anniversary 8-bit ones, and the Super Nintendo World Power Bands, which technically count as amiibo. Zelda, Splatoon, Animal Crossing, Yoshi's Woolly World, Kirby, Fire Emblem, Metroid, Shovel Knight, Monster Hunter, Chibi Robo, QB from Box Boy, Pikmin, Detective Pikachu, Mega Man, Dark Souls, Diablo, Delicious Amiibo, which is the cereal box, the Skylanders crossover with DK and Bowser, and like 6 different series of Amiibo cards, which I stayed away from entirely. I never got sucked into the Amiibo card of it all. But TJ, do you have them all, or was there a point where you stopped?
I don't. I was never completionist about it. I do have a lot, and I have far more than individual characters that there are. Before I tell you how many I have, I just want to qualify this by saying there was a time where GameStop sold 5 of them in a bag for the price of 1. So you buy 1, you get 5. And because I customized the figures, I was constantly looking for deals. So I did not pay full price for any of these. And a lot of these I got for a literal steal. They were, so many of them were buy 1, get 4 free. Or Toys R Us ran a buy 1, get 1 free. For a while there was buy 1, get 2 free at Toys R Us. Yeah. So many of these, I was just in the right place at the right time. I have well over 300.
Yeah.
How many of them are Luigi?
That's a good question. I probably have more Luigi than any other human being in existence because I customized so many different versions. I made a Dr. Luigi, I made an Ice Luigi in a clown car, I made a Luigi's Mansion Luigi. So I probably have no less than 10 or 15 Luigis.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember those deals. Like the Animal Crossing series, I think is kind of what broke the camel's back a little bit. Where it was
Right.
like,
I didn't pay more than $2 for any of that. I think I have the full Animal Crossing collection, and I never would have bought them, but I paid $2 each. I was like, for $2 each, they're absolutely worth it.
Yeah. All right, Chris, how about you?
I easily have over 100.
Yeah.
But I remember the Animal Crossing series. I didn't get all of them. I got some of them. They were all like on sale. I have everything from the Smash lineup at this point. I have all of the Metroid. I don't have the Kirby. I'm just scrolling through.
Mm-hmm.
The Super Mario ones. I have Gold and Silver Mario. And the Mario Odyssey ones. I thought they were cool. And Cat Mario, Cat Peach.
Yeah.
But that was pretty much it for that lineup. I don't think I have like it. It kills me to this day that I didn't get Diddy Kong and I didn't get Wario because like I would love to own those two and probably Boo. I have the classic Mario ones, every Zelda one, and I think I got like one or two of the amiibo card packs like when Animal Crossing was like really big, and just like I wanted to try it out. And then I got one of those like NFC tag readers that you can just like program it and then, do that whole deal with. But as far as like any of I have the cereal one. As far as any of the weird ones, Yu-Gi-Oh! Well, that's a card one.
Yeah. That's
yeah.
Was ever even in America?
No. Like the only ones I ever imported were ones that I couldn't get in the US that were available on like Amazon Japan.
Do you have QB?
Is it the Box Boy one?
Yeah,
No.
Do you have that one, TJ? Do you have QB?
I don't have that one either.
He's so expensive.
For me, the ones that I can't remember exactly which of these came first, but the ones that informed me that I didn't want them all and I didn't need them all was either Mega Yarn Yoshi or Gold or Silver Mario. I was like, I don't need color variants of these.
Yeah.
And I do think I got a Gold Mario because it was gifted to me by Amiibo Jason. So it has more sentimental value, but it's not one that I would have bought for myself. I didn't get QB because I don't even know who that character is. I know he's from Box Boy, but I never played the game.
Yeah.
And would you say he's probably the most valuable Amiibo at present?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super expensive. What, like between $200 and $300 maybe to get
Something like that.
No interest in trying to acquire that.
Yeah.
And I don't have all of the Monster Hunter ones either. I do have some because they just look awesome. So I have none of the Monster Hunter Stories ones that came out with the first Monster Hunter Stories game a while back. But when Monster Hunter remind me, Logan, what the one that just came out? Rise. When Rise came out, I bought those three because they just looked awesome. And Rise was the first Monster Hunter game that I just mentally committed myself to playing.
Nice.
So I was like, I'm going all in. I need the amiibo. We're doing this thing. And then when Monster Hunter Stories came out, I did not like Egg Girl or Weird Magic Cat. So I just bought the Rathalos because it looks awesome.
Yeah. I skipped the Rathalos. I didn't like its blue arms. It was weird. Like, I don't know. I know it's
because I'm not as versed in Monster Hunter as you are. I didn't know that was even a weird thing.
Yep. Yeah, it's like the Stories character from that game. But I have when I said earlier I was going to collect them all, I always only stuck to the Smash line. I did not branch out from that. Like when the Mario line dropped, I was like, I'll get Toad because he's the only one that's not in Smash Brothers. And I kind of continued that tradition with the Mario line. Like I have the Koopa, the Goomba, the Boo, the Waluigi, and the Cat Mario and the Wedding Mario. And then I have the Splatoon Octo Trio, who are very expensive prior to reprint. And I have the Small Fry from Splatoon 3, who is just super adorable. I love that guy. And I have all the Metroid ones. I have all the Zelda ones. Some of them I had to get on the secondhand market because I missed out on them originally back when I was like, I'm not buying all these. And I was like, I really should have all the Zelda ones.
You really should.
I think
if there was ever a line you weren't going to skip, that's the one.
I think I have 130 at my last count. Yeah. But I have all the Smash ones, including like Big Forehead Villager and Big Eye Villager, like the two different runs that he had. Gold Mega Man, Famicom Rob, all that stuff. But so yeah, that and the Zelda are my 2 complete lines, and then I have pieces here. And I guess Metroid, but that's only 4 of them. But man, the Metroid ones are so amazing.
They're so good.
They look awesome.
Yeah. So let's get into our favorite amiibo. I asked you guys to highlight our 5 favorite amiibo in our collections. I have mine here. I can go first.
Please do.
I didn't put these in any order, but I brought Mario out just because he's the first one I got, and I still think that he's just so good. I just love his fireball. I love his pose. The texture on his jeans, his overalls, I just think is amazing. I don't know why that detail is just always super stands out.
It's phenomenal. They came out swinging. What an amazing way to launch the series.
Yeah. Then I have a Bowser. I've always really liked this Bowser one. The ones that are modeled like actual humans just never look as good. Even today with how much better production is since the price increase. Like, they're just not as good. The ones that are big cartoony characters are always the best, and I've always loved this Bowser one. I just love Smash 4 and Ultimate Bowser's design in general, because it's kind of new for that game, and I think his amiibo is just amazing, and I like his pose. So I picked that one. And then my last Smash Brothers one, I picked Ness, not so much because his amiibo's great, but like for Nintendo to release official Earthbound merch in 2015 just felt unbelievable. So I always look at Ness and I'm like, I can't believe this one's real. And Lucas is even crazier for that same reason. But yeah, I love Earthbound, so I love this Ness one. And then 2 non-Smash picks. We're just talking about how good this line was. This Metroid amiibo. The Metroid breaking out of its glass case is so amazing. It's squishy. It's got the squishy
glorious.
head. Amazing figure. I love this one. And then I think my favorite amiibo of them all is Breath of the Wild Link from the Breath of the Wild line, the one of him shooting the arrow. And one of the reasons is I just think it's an amazing design, but I've always hated the plastic stands on amiibo, like I talked about. And this is the one I feel they really got it right, because he's on this cloud that is like the rush of air, like the Rivali's Gale, as he's basically leaping up to fire this arrow. So I think it's one of the few cases where they got the ugly plastic design right. I think it's a really good one. So
I will say that Link is phenomenal, and he just missed my top 5.
Okay.
If he gave me 6, he would have been on there.
I was going to pick one that I know will be in Chris's top 5. So I didn't, but it's actually probably my favorite Smash amiibo. Do you have 5 ready to go, Chris?
I do.
All right, let's hear them.
Number 1 is KK Slider.
Oh, nice.
It's such a classic pose. And it's just like one of those ones that people, you can have it on a shelf and have it be on its own, like with furniture. And anybody that like casually plays video games and only plays it like Animal Crossing will come in and just be like, nice. Like they immediately know what it's from, and it's just like respect.
That's the only Animal Crossing one I have. Is KK.
Oh, really?
That's it. Yep.
There's I was actually going through the list. There's a couple of them that I do really like for what those were used for. They're actually really well designed. Like the quality of them is very high. The Tom Nook one, Blathers, is always a good one.
Blathers,
yeah. And the Timmy and Tommy, I always thought were cute. Metroid, the one that you just described with the squishy top. That like all the ones that I picked are kind of ones that I'm like, I can't believe. I mean, KK makes sense, but I'm like, I can't believe these exist. Like, I can't believe they actually like took the time to make a mold and like merch for this. Yeah, the fact that we're getting Metroid anything is very exciting. The Link's Awakening amiibo. It's just so the toy-like quality of it. Like, that game is so unique compared to all the other games in like Nintendo's lineup. Like, its art style, and I want Earthbound like in this style so badly. But it's such a pure, like, it just feels like a toy. They're all toys, but like there's just something about it. It's very like there's something very wondrous. I don't know what other word to use. Fantastical about it. And then the opposite of that is Wrigley, which is like, I can't believe there's a Wrigley amiibo.
Ridley?
Yeah,
Yeah.
from
Ridley.
Metroid.
I'm like, who's Ridley?
Oh no. Yeah, Ridley from the Metroid
Yeah,
series.
Ridley is awesome. And his little thing he's standing on is cool too.
Yeah, he's standing on that like it's almost like the floor is like given out beneath him. Yeah. I love the detail on it. There's a lot of different textures and colors on that one. And it has like a bit of like a metallic sheen to it, which is really cool. But number one, man, you know I got two of them. You know I keep one in the box. It's Banjo-Kazooie. I remember the moment they announced Banjo was coming to Smash. That was one of the things I screamed. We were at lunch, like I was like with my coworkers, and they didn't know what I was talking about. And I was like, "There's gonna be a Banjo amiibo," and they were like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" Yeah, it's just the detail on it. I love the modern look that they gave them in that game. And it was like the thing that kind of ushered in not any Banjo games, but the fact that people remembered that Banjo existed. And then we got a bunch of Banjo merch after that, which was exciting. Yeah, I just think it's a great figure overall.
That I think is my favorite Smash amiibo also, but I saved it so you could debut them, because I knew obviously you'd have them on your list.
And then after TJ goes through his, I do have a little extra thing I'll show.
Okay, TJ, top 5 amiibo.
All right, these are also in no particular order, but I thought I'd give a little bit of variety. So each one that I picked is for a different reason, because there's a lot of different reasons that amiibo drew me in. So the first one I have is Wolf Link, and it's because of the way he functions in game. His functionality, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's unmatched in my opinion. Young Link from the Smash Brothers line, I love his pose. You pretty much could have just threw a dart at a board of the Legend of Zelda series, and I can make an argument why any one of those is amazing. But the Smash line Young Link, all things considered, I think combines a character that is the most meaningful to me with a pose that is extremely dynamic and the detail is very high. So I really love that one. Then Bowser Jr. from the Smash line is on here, and it's mostly because out of all of the amiibo, I have dismantled and reassembled this thing 12 different ways. So I have such an intimate knowledge of the way that it's constructed, and I've spent so much actual time playing with that amiibo that I've just naturally grown an attachment to it.
That's awesome.
Number 4 is Simon Belmont, and the reason why I picked him is because one of the first video games that I ever played, along with Mario and Zelda, is the original Castlevania. So to me, Punch-Out!, Castlevania, Mario, Zelda, they're all Nintendo series to me, even though Castlevania is Konami. So my association, though, is closely tied to Nintendo. And when they did the vote a character into Smash Brothers, Smash Ballot, I voted for Simon Belmont, and I really wanted him to be in. We all know now, ultimately, that went to Bayonetta. But that Simon Belmont made it into Smash Ultimate was, to me, the fulfillment of that unrequited desire to have the last retro character that was meaningful to me in the game. And it also is a testament to the detail that Mr. Sakurai pays to these figures, because the pose of that is modeled after the NES cover. So if you turn that figure backwards and you look at the cover of the original NES game, it's the same pose. And when I first realized that, it just was like unbelievably impressive to me.
That's insane. I did not know that.
It's wild. Yeah. It's wild.
That's really cool.
You have that big Dracula face looming in the background, and then this small hero just ready to face all odds and defeat all of the classic monsters to be able to save the day. And I've always been attracted to those types of stories. So to have that memory from my childhood recreated in small plastic trophy form earns him a place on my top 5. Mm-hmm. And then my 5th one is the Mii Sword Fighter. And what is a generic amiibo? And at first blush, people might be like, why would you ever want one of the most generic possible amiibo to be in your top 5? And the reason is because while the figure itself is unbelievably generic, there is no amiibo that is more customizable in-game, because what you can do with that amiibo is completely limitless. You can assign any sword fighter designed any different way to that figure, and I spent a lot of time customizing the exterior of the figure to match its in-game appearance. So of course I made the characters that I use for a lot of my content, Hero TJ and Dark TJ, and the amount of hours that I used those amiibo between the various shows that I worked on, from Smash Supremacy to Me v Me and Custom Conquest, I can't even begin to count those hours. Thousands. And so those figures followed me through that. Even though they're both the same figure, they look very different. And when you scan them into the game, they are very different. And I have an extremely strong attachment to them for that reason.
I knew a me was going to be in there. Yeah, I knew that you would have a me. It's like TJ and me go hand in hand. So yeah, those are good picks. I like the Castlevania fact. That's cool.
I did not know that. That is very cool.
I'll give one more shout out quick before Chris does his to Hero, because when the reaction you had to Banjo, I love Dragon Quest XI. I wanted Hero in the game so badly. So when he was announced, and the rumors were all saying that it was going to be Erdrick from Dragon Quest III was going to be kind of the lead character, and maybe we'd have these alternate colors from other games. But the fact that the one from 11, the game that I played and fell in love with, was the lead, which means he got the amiibo, that was just amazing. And that was the same day Banjo was announced, which were literally my top two characters I wanted in Smash Brothers in DLC was the Dragon Quest Hero and Banjo, and then we got them on the same day. And yeah, that was one of my favorite days in Nintendo history. That was E3 2019, I think, when they announced those.
Yep.
Super cool. What's your last shout, Chris?
There is a sculptor on Etsy and on Twitter. Her name is Emily Victorious. I believe she lives in she lives in England. But she makes these little figures based on Banjo-Kazooie characters and transformations. Cool. So this is one of them, but I have like a whole bunch of them. If you look at her Twitter account, she has like all the different transformations from Banjo 1, which I picked up. She's working on 2E now. But she made like the washing machine. She has Cheeto. But I put like the washing machine like in my laundry room.
Awesome.
And then like I kind of like rotate them in and out depending upon the season. They're not amiibo, but I just think they're, the attention to detail on them is pretty wild. If you're a Banjo fan, definitely check it out.
I want to talk about TJ's custom conquest here.
Yes.
What made you decide to customize amiibo kind of at the start of it all?
Hold on, and how did you how did you learn how to do all this as well is going to be my second question. Okay.
So I'll tackle your question first, Chris, because it kind of leads into the other one.
Okay.
When I was younger, I was always dissatisfied with the completion level of collections of figures. So I got really into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, as most kids who grew up in the 90s did, and I had a ton of them. But while they took every possible opportunity to make every figure that ever existed, they never made all 4 frogs. And eventually they only made Genghis Frog. If you're not a Turtles fan, this may not make sense. But at some point, Shredder decides that his reason for defeating the Turtles, or his way of defeating the Turtles, is to make 4 mutant frogs that he's going to pit against them. And so they made this Genghis Frog one, but they never made the other 3. They at some point made Napoleon, but his design was completely off. It looked nothing like he did in the show. So I thought, fine, if they're not going to make them, then I'm just going to get 3 of these other frogs and I'm going to paint them myself and make them look how they did in the show. And that's kind of where I realized I wasn't limited by what toy manufacturers made, and that with a little bit of artistic ingenuity and creativity, I could realize them for myself. I'm not a phenomenal artist. I have, I would say, like mediocre talent, but I'm super determined, and I don't really look at things as what they are. I look at things for what they can be. So maybe my approach to making amiibo figures is not the most expedient. There are tons of super talented customizers out there. I could give you a list as long as your arm, who have genuine talent, and they're just choosing to use that gift on amiibo. I'm not like that. I just want to have something, so I figure out a way to be able to manufacture it. But my process is very slow and inefficient, which is why, unlike a lot of other creators, I don't really sell them. I make them for myself to put in my collection. Each one could be anywhere between 10 and 50 hours. but I just needle away at them until they look how I want them to look. Then to your question, Logan, what made me want to start customizing Amiibo? As far as figure customizing goes, they're a little bit easier because they're not super small, but they're also not posable. So you don't need to maintain any figure functionality. You can lock every piece in place. And the reason why I did it was, as I alluded to earlier in the episode, I was very inspired by that E3 Amiibo announcement where Mr. Iwata fought Reggie. So I thought, at the time, I was working in LA as a sword fighter, and even though I was small time, I was making enough to be able to pay the bills, doing stunt work for various television movie projects, live events, doubling actors or training actors and things like that. And I had gotten myself very deep into a passion project that involved pitting all these different warriors from different time periods in fights. And I brought in all of my friends who were involved in stunts, and we shot these episodes, but they were extremely labor intensive. It took like hours and hours and months to practice these fights, shoot these fights. It took a lot of money to be able to hire the crew that I needed to be able to get it done, and then hours in editing. So I thought Amiibo is basically exactly what I'm doing, like pitting two characters against each other, who would win, except it's with my favorite Nintendo characters of all time. I'm just going to make an inexpensive show where it only costs me the price of a figure, and I battle them together. And basically the show is trying to answer the question, which Nintendo character is the most effective fighter in Smash Brothers? And I thought Amiibo were the perfect way to do that because it takes out the human element. The Amiibo learn all by themselves. They have very sophisticated fight algorithms where they learn based on their experiences. And I thought, I'm going to start really small. I'm just going to do the original Smash line. And as I also mentioned, that quickly ballooned into, I might as well just do the entire Smash 4 roster. But for that reveal video, I recreated Mr. Sakurai and Reggie Fils-Aimé fighting each other, except it was me fighting myself, which I shot in front of a green screen. And it was live action, and it was Hero TJ with Dark TJ. So I performed each part separately, and then I combined them together in post-production effects. And just like Mr. Iwata pulls out Mario in his video, I pull out Link, who is the hero that I've loosely based Hero TJ on. And one of the greatest villains in all of video games for me is Dark Link, because you face this unbelievable, insurmountable, evil demon in the form of Ganondorf. Like, what could possibly be a worse villain than the personification of evil? And then it's the darkness within the own hero's heart. And that was like, oh, it blew my mind in Link 2, where the only thing that can be worse than Ganon is the dark side of Link. So in that way, it largely inspired Dark TJ. So it's a trope, and I was playing on it, and I thought, if TJ is going to pull out Link, then Dark TJ needs to pull out Dark Link. But there is no Dark Link. So I thought, how hard can this be? I'm just going to, I mean, I could easily just paint up a Link amiibo to make him look like a Dark Link, but I'm like, no, that's just too easy. And far be it for me to take the easy path. So I customized him by completely disassembling him and putting him back together in the form of the Smash 4 3DS trophy pose, which is Dark Link, the alternate pose.
Yeah.
And I did the best I could, and it looked pretty good, and I was pretty happy with it, and so I used it in that video. And then I thought, once some of the other characters started coming out, why not just fill every Smash hole that Nintendo is not going to grace me with? If they don't want to do the Koopalings, fine, I'll have to do the Koopalings. If they don't want to do Elf, fine, I'll do Elf. So I eventually got around to doing all of them, although I haven't done the DLC characters. So I think I was up to date up until Byleth. I look at female Byleth, I'm like, nah, I don't want any part of that.
That looks pretty
And then
complicated.
all the different hero iterations is also pretty daunting. So I look at that, I'm like, is my heart in that? Do I really want to do that? But that's kind of what kicked the sorry for the long form version of the story, but that's kind of what kicked
It was a
off.
good story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your favorite custom that you've made, or also what was the most challenging custom? Let's do that too.
Okay. So my favorite, and this one I broke my one amiibo rule, where I never wanted to make an amiibo that couldn't appear in game as what it was. So, for example, if I customize a Bowser Jr. into Lemmy, when I scan it, it's Lemmy. Or if I customized a me into Hero TJ, when I scan it, it's Hero TJ. So normally I did that. But this one is the only one where I broke that rule, and I made a Lionel amiibo from Breath of the Wild, and I just love it. Like everything came together. As I said, I'm not a particularly talented artist, but that one, just the stars aligned, and I created something that was able to be the complete fulfillment of my mental picture. I achieved in plastic what I saw in my mind, and even though when I scan it, it's a rider link, it still is really satisfying to me, because my experiences fighting the Lionel in Breath of the Wild is my favorite thing about that game. So having some physical representation of that experience is very satisfying. And then, even though this kind of retreads old ground, of course, my Hero TJ and Dark TJ, they're some of the only figures I made more than once. I made them for Smash 4, and then I love the Amiibo Sword Fighter redesign for Smash Ultimate, so I remade those figures in that design. And at that point, I had a lot more experience working with Amiibo, so I had learned a lot of tricks, and I picked up a lot of tricks from other Amiibo customizers in the community. And in that way, and that's a pretty tight-knit community too, where we were able to, I wasn't the only one out there making tutorial videos. My intent wasn't so much to teach people how to do it, because I don't really think that I have the type of skill or experience to be teaching people. It was more to show how I did it. This was my process. Hopefully it will spark some ideas in you, and other people did that for me too. So I was also simultaneously inspired by more talented painters, by people who knew what tool to use to achieve this particular thing with the figure. And by the point that I made Hero TJ and Dark TJ Ultimate version, my skills had developed quite a bit. So I think that they're far superior to the first two that I made.
Cool. Where can people check all these things out that we're talking about and actually see?
If you want to see any of the Custom Conquest episodes, you can. Oh, sorry about that. If you want to see any of the Custom Conquest episodes or any of my other me or Amiibo related content, you can find them on the Nintendo Wire YouTube channel.
Do it.
And then
find really old videos of me narrating things from when I was like 19, also on that YouTube channel, that are still floating around.
It's
hey, everybody, Logan, play it here.
Yeah.
Little baby Logan.
You've always had that radio voice.
Thanks, man. Chris, you were going to ask something?
The as far as like the actual molds themselves, like I'm looking at this Tetra and King of Red Lions amiibo that you sold to somebody on eBay or Etsy, and it's brilliant. Are you 3D printing those? Are you?
No, so I never 3D printed anything.
Okay,
but I am notorious for repurposing things from other lines. So like Jakks Pacific for a while had the license to the World of Nintendo.
Right.
They haven't really been utilizing anything beyond the Mario series for the past several years. But at the time, they had some pretty cool 2.5-inch figures that I very often would dismantle for parts. So that King of Red Lions was actually to like a micro series, a tiny, tiny little Link that would go in it. But I thought that the ship itself was in perfect scale for Amiibo, but it wasn't really looking in the right direction, and maybe the sail was the wrong way. So I'm more modifying things that already exist than creating things from scratch. I do sculpt when I have to, but most of the time I'm patching. So I work more in plastic than anything. I'll shave. I would rather sand down a piece of plastic than sculpt something from nothing, because I feel like it's a lot more forgiving of it's a way slower process, but it's a lot more forgiving material where you can fine tune it. Where sculpting, I struggle a lot with getting it to maintain its shape throughout the entire construction process, and I don't really like doing pre-bakes, and I don't really like having to wait for something to completely cure. I want to be able to work when I can work. So mostly I'm dealing with the manipulation of plastic that already is fully formed in one way or another. So I'll like chop limbs off and use paperclip armatures to move the position. And then, of course, that leaves gaps at the shoulder joints and the elbow joints. So I'm filling those in with some type of epoxy.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool.
Very impressive. I couldn't.
Yeah, it really is.
That's awesome, man. So we're running a little short on time here, and something we haven't talked about at all is amiibo functionality, and I think that kind of proves the problem with them to begin with, was that they're not really about scanning them in. But TJ, you mentioned you really like the Wolf Link functionality, and that one had cool functionality in Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild. Do you want to talk about what you liked about that?
Yeah, I think that it's one of the few amiibo that bridges two games in a meaningful way, where if you win the Cave of Shadows in Twilight Princess HD for Wii U, then however many hearts you finished it with is assigned to the Wolf Link amiibo. And then when you scan the Wolf Link amiibo into Breath of the Wild, that's how many hearts Wolf Link has. So if you're playing Breath of the Wild and your Wolf Link has the base level of 3 hearts, he's fairly useless, especially if you're playing on hard mode. But if he has 20 hearts, he can be a very helpful companion. And I played the entire Breath of the Wild with Wolf Link. And it made the experience probably vastly different from somebody who played the game without Wolf Link, because if he dies in game, you can't scan him again until the following day. So that changed the way that I played, where sometimes he was running just enough interference to help me win in a big battle against a mob of bokoblins and moblins. And sometimes I would accidentally stumble upon a Guardian or a Lionel, which could easily one-shot him, and I'm struggling to keep him alive. So it wound up being this really dynamic push and pull, where that's how I would like to adventure in real life with my wolf dog companion who's helping me, but also it's a reciprocal relationship where I'm also helping him. I would drop him food and feed him so he can get his hearts back. I never played Twilight Princess HD for Wii U. Of course, I played the original one on GameCube and Wii. But when I bought that amiibo, it was secondhand from GameStop. And so, God bless Cody 1994, who had traded his amiibo to GameStop with all 20 hearts. So when I bought him, he already had 20 hearts on him. And I scanned it in.
Is your wolf named Cody 1994?
No, but the amiibo owner, you know how you can register an amiibo?
Oh.
So I was going to re-register the amiibo to me, and then I realized, oh, no, we're not going to do this.
He's got 20 hearts.
Yeah, the amiibo has a different name, so I think I named it Wolf Link or whatever.
Okay.
But it's registered to the original person because he's the one who got those hearts, and I wouldn't have any way to do that myself, because even if I did play Twilight Princess HD, I'm not sure that I have the skill to beat the Cave of Shadows with all of my hearts remaining.
Yeah. Chris, how about you? Any amiibo functionality that you particularly liked over the years?
Outside of, Breath of the Wild, I really, really liked for sure. The Super Mario Maker integration, where you got all those different characters, it was unexpected. Like, it was one of those things where I got the game and I had them all out on my coffee table like that day, because I was like, is this really going to work? Like, am I going to be able to scan Sonic and he's going to show up in the game? Like he did. I just couldn't believe not only the fact that it worked, but how good each individual one looked. Like, it wasn't like this phoned in thing. They all, fit that Super Mario Brothers aesthetic, which I really appreciated. That was probably the biggest wow moment that I had with them. Breath of the Wild was cool because it gave you all those resources. If you were really in a pinch, and you didn't have something, especially early on in the game, you kind of all right, let me sit here for a couple minutes and
I need some arrows.
Yeah, I gotta drop these from the sky and
Deus Ex Machina. Thanks, Hylia.
Yeah, totally. I really liked, this is very similar to the Mario Maker one, but Yoshi's Woolly World had very cool designs for basically every character. I played that entire game as Mega Man Yoshi because it gave Yoshi super cute red cheeks from Mega Man's the side of his helmet. So that one was really good. And the Kirby one is just bubblegum pink. There's just some really good designs from the amiibo in Woolly World. And then the one that I've gotten the most use out of in my life is scanning Captain Falcon into Mario Kart 8 to play as the Captain Falcon me in the Blue Falcon on Mute City because it's the closest thing we have to a modern
As it
zoo.
should be.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do that all the time. But largely, I said I have 130 amiibo. I've probably never even scanned well over half of them just because there's not always that much of a reason to. Like, very shortly after they came out, for me, it kind of just became about this figure collecting rather than scan them into the game. And I feel like it never realized its full potential with an amiibo.
I think it would be
game.
a little bit of an oversight not to at least mention Smash Brothers, which does have the deepest and most robust functionality. And I certainly poured thousands of hours doing that, training amiibo and having them battle each other and fighting alongside them. I do think that it left a little to be wanting in Ultimate. I think when it comes down to it, Ultimate is the best Smash game that's been created, but it's not best in all ways. It did lose some of its charms from Wii U with respect to customization. So you could assign custom moves to the amiibo that are just not even a part of the gameplay in Ultimate. And also the Miis were streamlined for Ultimate. So they're all the same size, shape, weight, where in Wii U, you can make a super tall, skinny one. You can make a really small, heavy one.
Yeah.
So in that way, your amiibo were a little bit more impactful and a little bit more powerful in Wii U and 3DS than they are for Ultimate. And the amount of hours that I spent playing with them in that game is just too many to count in many novel ways from the various shows that I was involved in. So I really loved that. But like you, Logan, I don't think that they really did ever have that necessary game. Like I just kept waiting for the Skylanders of Amiibo to come out, where let me have this sprawling adventure where if I want Little Mac, I can scan Little Mac into my game and go around and punch everybody. Or if I want to be Link, I could put Link in, and that would have been like the complete justification for the entire line. If you could just take any of them and put them in, you have this 3D version of this trophy figure that you have, and bringing them to life in Smash Brothers was amazing. But Smash Brothers is limited in the scope that it's a fighting game. If I was able to take these characters on an adventure, that's what I was missing. I want to take all these characters on some grand adventure, assemble them into impossible customized teams that you could never have, where Samus and Little Mac and Mario and Link and Donkey Kong are all fighting side by side in one big adventure because I collected these toys and I scanned them into the game. That's where I feel like they were headed. That was the promise, and we just never quite got there.
I just think that Nintendo never wanted to have a game where you couldn't play it without these things. And that was always the balance they always failed to find. It was like, remember the Skyward Sword? Zelda, that's a great amiibo, by the way. The Loftwing is awesome.
Yeah.
But it locked fast travel behind it to instantly warp back to the sky, and people were ticked about that. But then there's been other examples where, like, amiibo just unlock you, like, random materials, like in Hyrule Warriors, and people are like, oh, well, that's not enough for this. It's shallow. And they never found that right balance, I think, where they didn't want to alienate people that didn't want or couldn't afford these figures, but they also wanted to reward the people that did have them. And I think that was just kind of the failure and the proof of concept, where Skylanders, the figures are based on the game. Lego Dimensions, Disney Infinity, same thing. Yeah. But with Amiibo, it being this platform-wide thing, I think that Nintendo was just afraid of maybe being accused of like, oh, cash grab, you have to buy the Amiibo to play this one game. I think that they just wanted to avoid that, which
right.
I feel like Amiibo where... Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Amiibo Festival was kind of the example of them trying to do that, and it wasn't that great of a experience.
I
but
even remember that.
Yeah.
And they had another one too that was an Amiibo exclusive game that I believe was free.
Nintendo,
I think it was on 3DS.
Bits. It was the one where you could scan the Mario Amiibo, and then you would get to play Mario Brothers, and then you could go to the eShop to buy it.
There's another one even. There's another one where it was kind of like Mario versus Donkey Kong, where you have to get your little toy from the beginning to the end. I forget what it's called, but it was only compatible with, I think, 8 amiibo, and one of the characters was a generic character where you could scan any amiibo in, and it would spawn whatever that little avatar was. And I did play that game a lot, and I played it with my kids. It was fun for what it was, but it was a very bite-sized experience. It wasn't really something that I would say, I'm not going to buy an amiibo so that I can play this game. But if you already have amiibo, this is a cool little add-on that you get for free to be able to just have another way to interact with them.
It's a shame. Go ahead.
I think you're right, Logan, about them wanting to be separate and above being limited to a single app. And they were right in doing that, because where's Disney Infinity now? Where's Skylanders now? Yeah. Amiibo surpassed all of them. They entered a very crowded market, and people thought, do we really need another Toys to Lifeline? And Nintendo set themselves apart, saying, this is not so that you can play a game. These are going to have cross-game compatibility. You can use them in many different games. And they were true to their word on that. But sometimes the functionality ranged from unfulfilling to game locking or feature locking. And it was tough to strike that balance.
Yeah. And I don't think any other company could have jumped into that crowded market other than Nintendo on the strength of their IP. Like them coming in with Smash Brothers, like they were the ones that could do it, and they did. But Chris,
you can't name another company who has the characters that would have compelled me to buy them.
Nope.
No, I mean, as somebody who I played a decent amount of Disney Infinity, not a ton, but like Lego Dimensions, I had every single one. I gave them to my niece and nephew when they were younger. Now they're all destroyed. But like that was, that experience you were describing earlier, like that was that game. And what's unfortunate is like Lego Dimensions, you needed the portal, and Disney Infinity you did as well. But it was really smart of Nintendo to integrate that into the hardware that you were using anyway. Like, it's a shame that they didn't just make like, here's this $30 experience. It's a game that's going to last you 5 to 8 hours, and you can like drop all of them in, and they have all their like special abilities and things like that. Even if it is just like, all right, Little Mac is more of a brawler type character. Samus is going to be your shooter, and like just leave it at this baseline. But it would have been a good example of like, this is what this could have been used for, as a more like not open source, but like a more open platform, like for the Nintendo consoles that it was on.
Yeah.
I guess what I was kind of hoping for that never really came to fruition is I understand the limitations of trying to craft a game exclusively around a toy, because that's going to really limit your consumer base, because they're either going to have to do the cost benefit analysis and say, I already have to buy this game. Is it worth it to have to buy these keys to unlock features? But I would have loved to have seen something like Mario Party Superstars, where you have this roster of characters that all essentially function the same. There's no difference in the way that they play. Mm-hmm. You have hundreds of mini games, and the mini games are fantastic. I always play as Donkey Kong exclusively. But would it have really been a big deal if they gave us the base roster of characters and they just created models that were just skins for all these other characters, so I could scan in Little Mac, and Little Mac's going to function just like Donkey Kong. They still go in there, they play all these mini games. He's my little icon on the board. He moves around, and however many Smash Amiibo you have, you could basically make a Nintendo Party where your whole game is a Fire Emblem game, and all you have is these Fire Emblem characters. Sure, they're swinging their swords around, and the hitboxes are identical to from Toad to Donkey Kong to Ike, but even though it doesn't impact the gameplay, it's cool to be able to play as the character you want to be able to play as. If you have like 100 different mini games, sure, you could buy the game, not have a single amiibo, and pick from your base roster. Or you can scan in your amiibo and play as Ganondorf if you felt like it. That would have been super awesome to me.
I would have loved that. What I also always thought they should have done was, I really thought it would have been genius if they had built amiibo into Virtual Console. And basically said, you buy the Mario amiibo, you scan it in, you now own Super Mario Brothers on NES. You buy the Kirby amiibo, Kirby's Adventure is now yours. And like you put that on the box, and it's like you're not just buying a toy anymore, you're buying a Virtual Console game that's worth like $5 on the eShop. That would have been something super cool that they then experimented with a little bit in that Nintendo's Greatest Bits game, but it was like you unlocked a demo, and then it was like, go to the eShop to buy more. And I was like, oh, so close, but so far on that one. But I also got to give it a shout out to Captain Toad on Wii U. It had the Pixel Toad levels. You scan in the Toad amiibo. Every level has a Pixel Toad hidden within it to go find. They baked that into just the content of the Switch version, but that originally was an amiibo feature that was added after launch, and that was one of my favorite ones that actually meaningfully changed the gameplay rather than just being like a cosmetic thing. So that was one of the few times that it actually added some new content rather than just, oh, I look like this character now, which was most of what amiibo were.
Can I ask what you two found to be the most disappointing amiibo functionality?
Ooh, that's a great question.
probably just anywhere it was like, it didn't matter what you scanned. It was just you got materials for scanning. Like Hyrule Warriors did it. Monster Hunter still does it. It's just you scan any, and it doesn't matter what it is. That
Hyrule Warriors
kind of lame.
Yeah, Hyrule Warriors, I remember being very let down because you kind of like you expected that it was going to have that same kind of like pizzazz that Breath of the Wild did, where it was like, if I scan a Zelda amiibo, I'm going to get, you know, the Majora's Mask thing or whatever. And it didn't have that. It was just like, cool, here's another fire rod like that you have 9 of, and it's not that high of a level. And it's like, that was always a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, I have to echo that. For me, it wasn't so much that, like the random materials thing is very benign content. It doesn't add much to contribute to it. But what offended me was that you were limited to 5 scans a day. I'm like, I have 20 amiibo here. Let me scan 20 amiibo. What do you care if I get 5 dirty rags or whatever the case is
3
for every
rupees.
one of these scans? Come on now. That was arbitrarily limiting, where if I want to waste my time as a grown adult with a job and kids scanning 100 amiibo into Hyrule Warriors, I want 100 items. Let's handle this business. Yeah. Why are you locking me out of being able to make the most out of these silly little collectibles that I have amassed?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, if you spend the money and you have all these figures, especially in a single player game, it's not like you're getting some sort of competitive edge, then yeah, absolutely.
And not even all of them were good. Sometimes you get 1 rupee. If I scanned, like I'm still somewhat, when I look at my Samus from the Smash line, fantastic figure, but it was the first one I scanned into Hyrule Warriors and I got 1 rupee. And you only have 5. I still look at it and think, you're the 1 rupee amiibo. and so of course, out of the copious array of options, I'll never scan her into that game again because she's the 1 rupee amiibo.
Yeah, you don't want to tap it again.
Yeah, I like that they mixed it up so not all of the rewards are great, but come on, if you're trying to like farm for a particular very rare drop in that game, amiibo are a tool to kind of help you unlock that without having to replay missions that take 20 minutes 100 times. And so if you scan, you get 5 1 rupees, which has happened to me. That's pretty obnoxious. It's amiibo shouldn't make you annoyed. They should enhance the game experience, not make you want to smash your Wii U gamepad.
Yeah, that's a good call out. That's a good one. And we are out of time. We ran over. I figured we would, talking about
Leave it to me to end on a sour note. Sorry about that.
Well, I'll end by saying I think the Tears of the Kingdom amiibo looks amazing.
It looks
really excited
phenomenal.
about that one.
Yeah, it does.
I don't like the little plastic pegs around his ankles, but I really like the rest of it.
Do you like the different glider designs?
Yes, I'm going to use the Majora's Mask one.
Same.
Yeah, same.
Very cool. But TJ, thanks so much for joining us in the boardroom. It was a ton of fun. Where can people find you
pleasure's
online?
all mine. Pleasure's all mine. If you want to find me online, you can follow me on Twitter at Custom Conquest. I'm a pretty sporadic poster, so you definitely won't have me inundated in your feed. And like I mentioned earlier, if you want to follow any of the content that I'm creating, you could go to the Nintendo Wire YouTube channel.
And we'll have those links in the description. Thanks again, TJ. We'll have to have you on again sometime so we can read our Zelda journals together.
Yeah, I'd love it. Thanks.
And Chris Shriver, where can people find you?
You can find me at Shrives93.
You can find myself at Logan J. Plant. Find the show at ToadstoolBR on Twitter. Email us your amiibo memories at toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com. If you didn't care about amiibo, this was not the episode for you. But if you do care about amiibo, I hope you enjoyed it. This was another episode of the Toadstool Boardroom in the Books weekly Nintendo show here on Thursdays at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, talking about all the latest, greatest Nintendo news. Check out our thoughts on the Nintendo Direct from last week. We've got some other good videos up on the channel on YouTube or your favorite podcast service. Top 25 GameCube games, a Wii U retrospective, which also had a little bit of an amiibo tangent in there because they're so intertwined. But until then, we'll catch you back here next week. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great week. We'll catch you next time right here in the Toadstool Boardroom.